Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and our show today is The Wise Ones. We have a fabulous guest who's joining our platform for the first time. We're excited to welcome Jeff Klein. Before we do that, let's welcome the star of our show. He's the author of many books. This is his latest, The Essential New Author's Guide, a comprehensive checklist for writing and publishing your book on time and within budget. He's also a longevity strategist. He is my publisher for all of my books, which I think now there are 7 or 8 out there with another 5 to come. And every one of them has become an Amazon #1 bestseller or an Amazon #1 new release. He just celebrated 55 years of blissful marriage with his wife, and he's here today. Welcome, Red, to the show.
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. Always appreciate your introductions there. Just make me tingle all over. Thank you.
Thank you. Red, you have had so much going on recently, and yet you always show up at the highest level of professionalism. You are a distinguished Toastmaster, and you also give back. That's something that we don't really talk a lot about, but you're helping so many people in personal ways. Can you share just a little bit about that, and then we'll bring out Jeff, because I feel like being wise also means being heart-centric and thinking about others before thinking of ourselves. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest problems I have is if you ask me what time it is, I'll generally build you a watch. I have a tendency to go overboard in answering something. I'm getting better about understanding when I need to stop. You just want the time. You don't need all the other stuff. But one of the things I love to do is to research. And I do that almost, in fact, literally on a daily basis, including Sundays. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat a symptom, you'll always be treating symptoms. And in keeping with trying to give something new to Dr. JACALYN periodically that she doesn't know about me, one of the things that I did in one of the last companies I worked for, a large oil field service company, was I did a thing called Taproot. I was their primary investigator when things went wrong. They had a failure here somewhere in the world. What happened? And what can we do to prevent that from happening again? And so I got involved when you start asking, interviewing people, well, why did that happen? Well, okay, fine. Well, why did that happen? Okay, that's interesting. Why did that happen? And you try to get down to about 7 levels of why. And now you're at basically the root cause. And so as I'm looking at these root causes, you can generally fix something if you know what's wrong. Well, my wife came down with breast cancer a number of years ago, and part of being a caregiver, I was trying to figure out what can I do to help alleviate some of the side effects. And so I got back into my chemistry mode, something that I hadn't done for years and years and years. I got a degree in chemistry because I loved it. Never got a chance to practice it because I got an invitation to Vietnam. But I use that chemistry background to look at what chemical reactions are going on. What can you do to speed them up? What can you do to slow them down? What can you do to stop them? And if you know what does what to whom when, then you have the ability to have some kind of interjection of something. And maybe you want to speed up something. Maybe you want to slow it. It doesn't matter. But you have some level of control. And that's not what we hear from our doctors. It's not what we hear from nutritionists. It's not what we hear from a lot of people. We hear, take this pill. I think it's this, whatever. And so when I'm trying to outline something, I can't say, well, I was prescribed to this because I've never been a doctor. It's not one of those things I've been, never worked in the pharmaceutical field. But I can say, if I had those symptoms, based on what I know that this causes that, this is what I would do. And so when I start trying to help people, I try to put myself in their shoes and say, if I had this kind of problem, this is the direction I would lean in. This is what I would do. And so that's the way I approach things, Dr. JACALYN.
Thank you, Red. Would you please introduce our guest?
Jeff Klein is a good friend of mine from many years ago, well before the pandemic. He lives up in the Dallas area. I'm down in the Houston area. And it seemed like about once a month he would come down to the Houston area and do a little recruiting, a little networking, trying to get some business for his speakers. I think I made it up to one of his meetings, maybe two of his meetings up in the Dallas area. And I'm going to let him go a little bit more on that. But he's a speaker par excellence. He takes care of his speakers. In fact, I'm going to let Jeff talk to you about his world and speaking. Jeff, please join us.
Hi, Jeff. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Red. Hi, JACALYN. Thank you so much.
It's so nice to meet you, Jeff. You know, being a speaker, a public speaker, professional speaker is an area that so many people are interested in pursuing, and yet at the same time, don't take the steps to do it because of fear. What can you share with our audience about that stage fright and that actual concept that we're not good enough, the imposter syndrome?
Well, you know, the fear of speaking, and you probably know this, is one of the top two fears of all human beings. Most people have their top fear is either getting up in front of people and speaking or dying. As Jerry Seinfeld says, what that means is at a funeral, half the people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. So we know that the fear of speaking is a big thing. I think the imposter syndrome is a little bit different. The fear of speaking is more about being afraid of something, who knows, catastrophic happening. And the best cure for the fear of speaking is practice and breathing, of all things, because as long as we are taking deep breaths and getting oxygen in, and this goes right to what Red was talking about with health and wellness, as long as we are feeding our bodies with that oxygen, it actually acts as a relaxing agent on our physical beings. It's really amazing in that way. But so when people have, you know, I do help people with the fear of speaking. Another way to help with the fear of speaking, I believe, is those folks who practice hypnosis is a very good way to help with that fear as well. But if you practice and practice and practice what you're going to say, don't say the same thing. Don't do a script. That's acting and performing. Speaking is different. But if you practice what you're going to say and over again, and know that when you stand up, you're going to say this and get this message across, then you'll be less nervous about doing it. And then if you make sure you breathe before, during, and after, you'll find yourself much less apprehensive about getting up and speaking to folks. So that's my off the cuff help for the fear piece. If you've got a deeper fear, you need to work a little, you know, we can work together, or you can work with a hypnosis or a coach. But the overall fear is if you'll practice and prepare and take a deep breath to start your talk.
Thank you.
It's interesting, Dr. JACALYN, the fact that in one of my books that I wrote about the subconscious mind, you know, our subconscious mind is there to protect us. It's its number one prime directive in life. It has no other mission. And one of the things it protects us from is embarrassment. And when you're speaking, one of the things I think the fear is that I'm going to make a mistake and now I'm going to be embarrassed. And so that fear is not something that's totally foreign. It's just something that's in alignment with the way our subconscious mind controls 95% of everything we do. And with what Jeff is saying is when you practice and you have the ability not to regurgitate, but you have the ability to feel comfortable going from point A to point B to point C to point D, then that fear of embarrassment dwindles, because you always have the ability to say, yes, let me rephrase that. And these are little tips and tricks and things that a more polished speaker has, where a lot of people think, I stop for just that extra second, a second and a half, and they think that's 5 minutes of stopping. But it's not. And depending on how your body
Yeah.
language is, it may be a natural part of just taking a 2 or 3 second, really seems like 5 minutes, stop in the middle of your speech and just looking at the audience. There's lots of things you can do. And people like Jeff have those things nailed. And I mean, a perfect mentor for helping that beginning speaker get out there and put their toes on the stage and be able to let their ability to tell their story flourish.
And another thing on top of that, Red, that goes exactly with what you're saying. Nobody but you knows what you're going to say. So if there's no right or wrong. If it's different than what you were planning, you're the only one who knows. So you can't mess up if you're the one who planned it. So that's another thing where you have to let yourself off the hook, which kind of comes down to one of my favorite catchphrases, and that is that perfect is the enemy of good.
I love that, Jeff. I want to just bring up something that maybe it's just me, but why I get nervous has nothing to do with anything that we've discussed. It's almost like now I have these bright lights all on top of me, and it's hot. It's literally hot. I remember the first speech that I gave that I can remember was I was running for student council vice president, and I knew I was going to be on the stage and it was going to be hot. So my mom got these little underarm things that you put under your dress so that nobody could see me sweating. What do we do to prepare for that? Because sometimes if you're at a conference, it could be freezing cold, but it can be really hot under the lights. Jeff, what do you think?
That's a great question, JACALYN. Great question. I have a fan right over that direction. There's a fan about 10 feet over there blowing up in the air. So I got a really good circulation of air for me when I'm on Zoom, because it's not about nervousness. It's just so I'm always comfortable when I'm working with folks on camera, because that's how I coach my clients. There's very few people I work with in person. We all work over Zoom all around the world. So you can do all kinds of things to make yourself comfortable. Another thing is you're always going to be a better speaker if you're standing. I have my computer, I'm on a laptop. It's on an adjustable desk. It's on an adjustable platform that can go up and down. So if I were giving a speech instead of doing this interview, I would actually have the desk raised up and I'd be a couple of feet back and I'd be standing, because you're always more powerful as a speaker standing up. Your instrument, your body helps you project better when you're standing. So that's another tip. And for the breathing and the oxygen and all those things, your instrument, which is your body, will help you project your message better when you're standing. So that's part of being prepared and making your environment comfortable for you. There are a lot of folks who they won't speak in a public, in an in-person public venue if they haven't gone in and walked the room ahead of time. It's if they're especially tend to be more nervous folks or more introverted folks, and there are a lot of folks who are introverted who have become very profound public speakers, but they'll go to that room ahead of time, the day before, the night before, the morning before they're due to speak in front of 1,000 people, and they'll walk the room while it's empty. So they get comfortable in that space and they make that space their own. So that's another way, like even in junior high, to go out there on the stage before it's full of before there's an audience in the room, so that you can actually feel what the room feels like. That actually reminds me of a great scene in a really good movie, in the movie Hoosiers, where Gene Hackman brings his team out on the basketball court in the empty arena and makes them measure the court to show it's exactly the same as their court at home. So that every court is the same dimensions, no matter how big the audience is around it. And it's really the same thing when it comes to speaking. You don't change. It's just the audience that you're speaking to changes. And in the case of a big, large audience, they're in the dark and you almost can't see how many people are out there. So in smaller audiences, you're more likely to actually see and relate with the audience because you're in the same room and everybody's lit up. So, but you just have to recognize what works for you individually. Like what worked for you was having those pads because your mom knew that you were going to be sweating there. So rely on your mentors, your experts. My dad helped me with my first speech, which happened to be my bar mitzvah speech. And he taught me about breathing. He taught me to, before you start speaking, you take a breath and you use that breath to start your talk strong. And you pause right before you do that. And with on the sweating front, he taught me about wearing undershirts because, it's an extra layer of clothes. So you think you'd be more hot in an undershirt, but the truth is you're cooler. So, and that's why they make you wear them in the military, I think, Red, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know if that's the real reason, but they certainly do make you do that. You mentioned being an introvert. I am a major, major introvert, but I learned that many years ago, you have to wear a different hat depending on what you're doing. If you're a fireman, you put your fireman hat. Please put a fighter pilot. You put the hat on for the mission you have that right then. And so when I have a mission of being an extrovert, to speak, to network, whatever it is, I put that hat on. I go do what I'm supposed to do. As soon as I get done, I throw that damn thing away, and I go back to my normal way of just sitting in by myself, reading a book or whatever it may happen to be. But speaking is, you got to put your speaker's hat on, and you have to understand the dynamics of what's there. But those things are super easy to learn, but somebody's got to at least make you aware of them. They could teach you, but until you do it yourself and make some mistakes, it's not the same thing as knowing. And that's a big, big deal, is the practice you're talking about. It's not just practicing in front of a mirror, and that's good. I mean, when I do a Toastmaster speech for 7 minutes, I make sure I can deliver it in 4, because I know that when I'm speaking, it's going to have a life of its own. And generally speaking, that little red light goes up at about 6 minutes or whatever it does. And I'm 2 minutes over my allotted time, but I know how I want to end it. But as you say, I'm not memorizing. I'm not being a screen producer. I'm doing something, but I have flexibility to where I can go because I know the topic so well. That red light pops up. Okay, I got to wrap it up, and I do. And so these things are all the things that you teach people how to do. These are things that you've mastered, that you can get other people. I mean, these are things in your bailiwick that I think are so great, and that you've helped so many hundreds, maybe thousands of people over the years be able to be so comfortable on stage and really and truly become their own dynamic personality.
Thanks for that, Red. Yes, absolutely. And another thing to learn about ourselves is, where do we get our energy? So some people spend their time on stage giving their energy to the audience, and they end the day speaking exhausted. They're just completely wiped out. And then some of us, they give energy to the audience, but they get more from the audience. When I'm done speaking, I'm floating a high, I'm off the floor. My feet aren't touching the ground. And if I speak in the evening, I can't get to sleep that night because I'm just so full of positive energy and feedback from the folks that I've been in front of. Because people ask why do you do what you do? And my moment is when I see that light bulb just pop on over somebody's head, and I can see in their eyes that they got it. They got some lesson, some tidbit, some nugget of information that they're going to use and they're going to grab onto, and it's going to help them change their life for the better. And that's why I do what I do, because as a speaker coach, I get to help people change the world with what they do. And to me, I couldn't ask for anything better as an exciting way to help folks and help change the world in an exponential way.
Well, Jeff, one of the things you can do to help people, and you mentioned this earlier, walk the room ahead of time. And that's one of the things I generally do, not the night before, the morning of, but actually the 20, 30 minutes before the event starts. I want to know, who are the people, where they're coming from, what do they expect? If I can meet their expectations, they're happy. And so I ask them, and I look at 3 or 4 or 5 people that, okay, these are what these people want to know. So when I'm on the stage, at least down here in Houston, we coined this thing, a Texas two-step, where you kind of rotate to one direction and you're looking specifically at a person. You're looking at their face, you're looking at their eyes. And when you're talking to them, you're going to get a little nod, and then you back off and you take a general look, and then you take the Texas two-step in the other direction. And so I hone in on these people that I've talked to before. I know what they want, and I know when in my speech I'm going to deliver that. Or I say, some people want to know about this, but that's not one of our topics today, but I will be talking about that at some point in time, or you can get it in my book. And so I try to address the issues, even though I don't catch all of them with the detail. But when you get that little nod from the person because you're making a direct connection with them, that is a powerful tool for a speaker because you've connected.
Absolutely. 100%. And now the pre-walk, when there's people with you and you're researching, and that's actually a different step in the whole process of speaking to get results. So the walking the stage when it's empty is one thing, and that's for the person who needs to familiarize themselves with the room. But then walking the room beforehand with the audience and getting to know the people that you're going to be speaking to, that's actually part of the process as a speaker. That's actually, I consider that part of the talk, because you're getting to know the people you're about to address. And oftentimes they don't know that you're the speaker. They just know that you're somebody in the meeting and you're being polite and you're having a conversation. And then a few minutes later, you get introduced and you're up on stage and you refer to them. Hey, I was speaking to Sally over here, and we were talking about, what were we talking about, Sally? And you get them involved in your talk. And that's part of being a great speaker, is bringing the audience into the conversation. Because if you want to lecture, go to school. Teachers we all need great teachers, but that's where lectures are. If you're a speaker, you're having a conversation with the audience. And so that thing is a whole other piece. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were finished. I know. I just love what you shared there, because I think that's so important. When I was going to give the eulogy for my dad's funeral for my dad, it was 11 minutes long, and I consulted with a coach, and the coach said, make it about the people who are there attending. Don't make it all just about your dad, but about the people doing things with your dad and the memories. And I did that, and I looked at each person and said, hey, remember Susan, blah, 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 when my dad, you did this and that. And that really, I think, brought it together. Now, I was a nervous wreck. I was holding onto the table. My legs were shaking so badly. I thought I was going to pass out, but nobody knew it. And so, to your other point, nobody knows what you're going to say, and nobody knows what you're feeling. What about when speakers start off with, hey, I'm really nervous? Because I've heard that people, they tell you how they're feeling. What do you think about it?
I think it's a bad idea. I mean, there is an element of performance that goes into being a great speaker. And unless you're trying to make a certain point, there's really no benefit to saying you're nervous or you're uncomfortable or anything like that, unless there's some point that you're trying to make with the audience. I mean, if you're trying to teach about confidence, then you might do a thing where it's more of a bit where you act all nervous and then change your whole attitude and talk, and then say, which person would you be more confident? Which person would you rather have teach you a lesson, this person or that person? But if you're just confessing to the audience that you're not comfortable, that's just a bad idea. It goes against the whole purpose of your being up there. When you're on stage, you're the expert. It's your job to entertain. It's your job to educate. It's your job to give value to those people that are out in the audience. And even if it's new content for you, even if you think it's, pardon my roommate there, even if you think of it as practice, if you're in front of living, breathing people, it's your job to give them value. So you're doing them and yourself a disservice if you're confessing your weaknesses. It's just not, again, unless that's the reason for what you're doing, then you should not do that.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Jeff, some people have the ability to be humorous in small groups, but it doesn't automatically translate to being humorous on a stage with a microphone. And when you walk up and you tell a joke and it bombs, you are so far behind the power curve that it's almost impossible to recover, especially if that affects you emotionally. And even when you practice some joke, I mean, humor is a very narrow niche that some people, it's a timing issue. It's so many things. And just because you're funny in a small group, don't think that that's going to translate. That you want to talk a little bit about humor and speaking?
Sure. Great question, Red. One of the best things I ever did for my speaking was take a class on stand-up comedy. I, as a kid, I always wanted to be a stand-up comedian. But I took a class from a gentleman named Dean Lindsay. He's an Emmy winner. He lives here in Dallas, and he's more of a corporate comedian now but he still shows up at the Improv every so often. But this class, I learned how to write a joke properly. I learned how to deliver a joke properly. I learned how to deal with when a joke goes bad. and I learned, one of the important things I learned was not to ad lib in a joking, in a comedy situation. And just some really amazing lessons. I also learned that I don't have a desire to be a stand-up comedian because it's a way more work than I don't have the drive or the passion for it. But I sure enjoyed the class, and I understand the lessons. And I think everybody who's serious about speaking should learn, at least take a short, whatever kind of class you can take on stand up, you should. And if you can take a class on improv, which is a completely different science, you should do that as well. Improv and stand up are two different kinds of comedy, and they're both very useful to those of us who want to be public speakers as our job. If you're, the other kind of speaker, and this is how you and I met, Red, was we were both business speakers. We were speaking to get clients. And that's not as necessary, but it's still a great set of tools to have in your toolbox. I got to tell you that.
Well, I've noticed, go ahead, Dr. Jack, look like you want to say something.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I can really relate to that because we've all been to some kind of presentation where somebody started off with a joke and you're just like, oh, so painful. But what about also the things that are painful when somebody has a presentation deck and they turn their back to the audience and they're literally reading point by point. This is the annual. It's like, oh my gosh. How does someone use tools to provide information to the audience without depending on them for the presentation? There's a difference, right?
Right. Well, and what you're running into there is somebody who is not a speaker. They've been voluntold that they're giving that presentation, and that slide deck is their crutch. And so they're fortunate enough to be able to read the slides, or they wouldn't get through it. And so I almost never use slides as a speaker. There's just very few cases when I have to do it, I have to use them. There's very few cases when I recommend that people use them. But so in that case, JACALYN, the best thing that could happen would be for his company to hire an expert like me to teach those people in the business how to do presentations better. And that way they would trim the slide deck. They would be able to convey the information without having slides full of content. And I mean, we all remember not just business. I remember high school where I had a class And all the teacher did for the entire school year was read. And now then it was an overhead projector, so I am dating myself, but would put sheets on an overhead projector and read the sheets to us for an entire school year. And wow, I was a guy, I liked school, but I didn't like that class.
Jeff, I am laughing so hard about the overhead projector. I hadn't thought of that in decades. Oh, we've come a long way. One more question, then I will turn it back to Red. So we are talking about people that don't have experience. And then I've also seen people with extensive experience. I attended a meeting, and it was a senior executive from a telecommunications company that everybody would know. And he actually took his shoe off and was kind of flipping it around, and he had coins in his pocket that he kept. And I thought, this guy seems so casual, just so laid back, and it was very distracting. So can that happen on the other end, where you're just so comfortable that you just forget you're giving a speech?
And again, I go back to the same advice. They should hire a coach, hire an expert to give that person advice. I mean, every top person in their profession on the planet has a coach to help them be better. I mean, the best quarterback in the world has a throwing coach. he doesn't stop using a throwing coach when he wins the Super Bowl. He still has a coach that's the team pays to be the quarterback coach. So those guys should always have somebody who gives them, even if they just spend an hour with them, hey, watch my speech and give me some notes. But the truth is, most of them are too arrogant to take the advice. And by the time they're at the position they're in, most of them, they don't care about any of that stuff. But the ones who do will hire somebody to help them do it better. As a matter of fact, I'm working with a company right now to improve their speeches at trade shows. And it's really fun and exciting because they got great stories to tell, and I'm just helping them tell the stories better, and I'm helping them create actual scripts for the talks so that they're not the only two people in the company who can do the talks. So they got smart, and actually what happened was somebody in their company got smart who already knew me and said, hey, what if we had somebody who could help us do this stuff? And they went, okay, we'll try that. And now we're having a great time. So coaches work for everything that you can improve on. So as a speaker coach, I'm having a lot of fun now helping folks with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. I probably have 6 or 7 coaches right now, including Red.
There you go.
One of the things that
your book coach.
Yes. One of the things I was alluding to earlier on the humor, starting out with humor, I noticed that when I'm speaking, depending on who the audience is, how big, how close, what we're talking about, somewhere in the first third, there may be an opportunity. You might want to throw something out there that's funny because you've already got the audience warmed up. It's not a cold audience. And so there may be something that works well, maybe cold humor, maybe dry humor, but you'll kind of get a little feedback, and that's kind of like tipping your toe in the water. And if that works, okay, fine, you can go a little bit further. So there are some things you can do. You just don't come out and blurt everything and hope for the best. Yeah. So
yeah, it's very old school to start with a joke. And what I have people do is we help folks write their introduction, because the introduction is different than the bio. And in your introduction, you include something personal about yourself that will get people smile, or just open up your personality a little bit. It doesn't have to be a laugh, a roommate. It just has to be something that will help people feel more warmly about you. For example, the last part of my introduction is that when Jeff's not when he's not working, you'll find Jeff watching movies, playing poker, or being the most awesome uncle in the world. And I'll come out and I'll say, yeah, I can prove I'm the most awesome uncle in the world because I have the T-shirt. And then I'll go on into my talk. So that's kind of a joke, but I'm not expecting a big laugh. But it's a way to just show people that I'm not too serious, that I'm there to be a regular human being,
Yeah. One of the biggest things I think can help a speaker, especially at the end of the speech, if there's questions that they have, is somebody says, and 14 rows over, nobody can hear what the question is, and you just automatically answer something. So I repeat the question back to them, making sure that's what they're asking. Now the whole audience understands, and if there's a clarification needed, we can get that clarified before an answer comes. But as a speaker, yeah, you're speaking to one piece, but your audience is the entire person out there, and other people probably want to know the same answer. So if you're in a situation like that and somebody asks the question, whether everybody hears it or not, it doesn't matter. If they have a microphone, it doesn't matter. Repeat the question. Okay, your question is this. Yes. Okay. Now everybody there has heard that question, and if there needed to be a clarification, you gave that person the opportunity rather than just dumping into an answer that that may or may not satisfy that particular question.
Yeah, and that's why guys like you and I, Red, are good facilitators. Because being an MC, a master of ceremonies, or a facilitator is a skill as well, and it's not the same as being a speaker. When people do panel discussions, yeah, they should absolutely make sure that they have a good facilitator. It's not just the boss or the guy who's the president or what have you.
Yeah. And there's so many times you show up for an event and the person doesn't have an HDMI cord. You can't use your slideshow. You can't do, or whatever it may happen to be. So yeah, you're going in there. I got my slides. I got everything I need. And all of a sudden you don't have slides. You don't have a mic.
Yeah.
You have to, what can go wrong? And it's not until it really happens to you that you really take advantage of it. It's okay. That happened to me before. I better be ready for it. So it's not just being prepared. It's being super prepared in order to be able to meet the objective of passing on, as you said earlier, the value to that particular audience that you're going to do that day.
You bet. Yeah. I always have a handout, a printed handout for everybody in the audience. And when we're virtual, I have a download link so everybody can click the link and download that document to their computer. And and this is a little thing that people don't always think about, I make sure it's a Word document that they're downloading, because not everybody knows how to write on a PDF. People are like, well, if it's a Word, then, but if it's a PDF, not everybody knows how to write on it. They have to have extra tools. Make it a Word document so that people can take notes, because you sure want them to take notes on their worksheet. So just little things like that can make a big difference when it comes to after the presentation, when people are remembering you. Those are real important.
I picked up an interesting networking skill here recently. They have a group that a couple, 300 people fairly consistently in person. And almost everybody takes their phone and just literally taps their LinkedIn. It's an automatic pass through. However, 10 people down the road, you can't figure out who that was. So unless you take that person's information, nice to have met you at this event today, and the time is on there. Now you have a link back to that person and who that person was, and if there was something unique about them. So just passing on information or getting a business card, unless you write on it where the thing was, what that person's interest is, there's a lot of things that go along with this. The speaker role is not over when you're off the stage, because you're constantly hunting for new environments to speak in. And that's part of this networking that Jeff and I were so actively involved in the pre-pandemic years. And it was, Dallas is just a short 4-hour drive away. But for a lot of people, 4 hours is a pretty long trip. But he would come on down and, network here. And it's just one of those things that you have to do. I see we're getting toward the end of our show.
Well, and that's, the earlier part of what you were saying is why I think everybody should have their picture on their business card. See if I can get it without the light. Yeah, there you go. Not just realtors. Everybody should have their picture on their business card. And it says, who do you want to meet today?
Well, Jeff, we're getting toward the end of our show. Who should contact you? How should they contact you? And what value do you offer?
So the primary thing that we offer is exposure for people who speak. We have an international destination website that meeting planners use every day to book speakers. It's been up for 17 years. We have over 100 speakers there, sorted by category and by category topic and keyword. So people come and look for speakers based on leadership, team building, self-development, whatever the case may be. And membership is very reasonable. We have 3 different membership levels. We help people who are developing as speakers. We have all kinds of education, monthly practice stages, monthly masterminds. If you don't need any of that, then it's still a no-brainer to be on the website so that those meeting planners can find you. And unlike a lot of the other speaker websites, we don't get between the speaker and the meeting planner when it comes time to make a deal, to get paid to speak, or what have you. So whether you're speaking to get clients and not getting a fee, or whether you're speaking to earn a living as a speaker, speakercoop.com is the right site to be on.
Okay. That's Speaker Co-op, SPEAKER, Speaker Co-op, COOP.com for our audio audience today.
Exactly.
And Jeff Klein is JEFF, and Klein is KLEIN. Jeff Klein.
Jeff, who's
Yes,
your
sir.
friend there?
This is Lavi. This is my 20-year-old Siamese who just has to walk over the keyboard.
Well, you trained her well.
She's starting to write.
He
So.
will not walk in front of it or behind it.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today, Jeff. Thank you so much. I hope you'll come back. I have many more questions to ask you, so please do come and visit us again. And Mr. Red O'Loughlin, how can people get in touch with you, and who would you like to contact you?
Primary way to contact me is through my website. That's redolaughlin.com. Red like the color, R-E-D, O'Loughlin, O-L-A-U-G-H-L-I-N. So it's Red O'Loughlin, R-E-D, O-L-A-U-G-H-L-I-N.com. My preferred method of contact is phone. Just give me a call. Phone number's there. Email, same way. Just send me an email. I help people with primarily with their books and with their publishing. That's the primary opportunity that I offer people. And very shortly here, we're going to be on another episode of Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And this 6-part series deals with weight management. And we're getting into the science of weight loss. What actually happens chemically in the body? And why does calories in equal calories out? Or does it? And why not? Or why? So we're getting into understanding what's really going on in the body chemically, what is stopping something from happening that should happen, or what is something you can fire up and make it happen more effectively. So join me. That's at 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central every Thursday, Talking Heads. And we're in the middle. This is part 3 of 6 on weight management, and we're delving into the science of losing weight.
Thank you so much, Red. I appreciate it. And by the way, Jeff, woo, look at this. I got my business card with my picture on it. I'm ahead of the game. All right. We are going to sign off now. And I just want to acknowledge our sponsor. This show is brought to you in part by Zane Carson Carruth, who is an official sponsor with a brand new show that is airing today at 4 p.m. EST. It's called Elegance, Polished Demeanor, and Posh Living. Thank you so much, Zane. Thank you so much to Jeff and Red. We'll be back shortly. Let's take a look at Zane's sponsorship.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Carruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating more memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Abella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the tooth fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book Abella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.